Hello, everyone. This is Peter Desmond Kelly, host of Peter the Healer, your celestial broadcaster, the place for great interviews where I ask the questions nobody else does. And we'll be back right after this.
Hello? Hello? Hello?
Hi.
Is this Peter the Healer?
Yes. No, actually, I'm the audio engineer for the show, Peter the Healer, your celestial broadcaster.
Where is Peter the Healer?
That's a good question. I really don't know. I've been trying for the last 10 minutes trying to reach him, but he's not answering.
Have you tried tuning into 528 Hertz, the love frequency?
No, that's a good idea. I'll give it a try. Let's see what happens. Hey, you know what? I think I'm getting some
Radio Noise.
Hello?
Rádio Noise
Hello?
593
Anybody out there?
com DJ e produtor brasileiro Rod Novaes.
This is Peter the Healer, your celestial broadcaster, and we've got another guest today, a very special guest coming from Toronto. And I'm going to just give you a little background on this guy before I bring it over to him. Born in Toronto, Canada, but worked as an international dancer, choreographer, and artistic director. He's a former dance champion and has helped transform several artists into international successes. He lived in Korea, Japan, and China as a dancer and choreographer before returning to Canada. While abroad, he faced various traumatic incidents that began to manifest themselves in his personal and professional life. After a few life-threatening close calls, he sought out a treatment that included deep hypnosis therapy, emphasizing self-worth and reprogramming limited beliefs. The profoundly personal discoveries and lessons are something he shares to help people identify their challenges and confidently access their true potential. Welcome, Patrick, to the show.
Thank you, Peter. I appreciate it. Thank you for carving out time to have me here today. That means a lot. So thank you. I'm excited
Pleasure.
to share and to have our conversation, Peter.
It's a real pleasure to have you on board. And
Thank you.
I'm all about helping people reach their fullest potential and develop confidence. And I like the way you have names, they mean a lot, how you put words to things, and there's something in how you engineering confidence.
Yeah.
The signature program. Do you want to talk a little bit about that first, or?
Yeah, sure.
Talk about?
Sure. I mean, and thank you for the great introduction. I do appreciate it. Yeah, and the engineering confidence program that I have, it is like a 9-week program that I do. But really what it does, and I guess let me even start with the drive for where it came from was, some of the challenges that I faced, like I was working with high performance people traveling. So you're in this ecosystem where people are constantly driven, constantly goal oriented, looking for solutions, trying to be the best versions of themselves. What I was also finding in some instances, and especially for myself, I want to speak for myself, when you don't clean house, Peter, and you have baggage, garbage, things from habits that you're not cleaning up, ruts, substance abuse, when there's an emptiness and there's a void, you find ways to fill that energy, right? You find ways to deal with those things, and sometimes it's in an unhealthy way, especially if you haven't done the work. Personally speaking, before I get into that program, what I found was I was in a place where, although I was executing these habits to achieve all these successes, travel and tour and fulfill my dream, I was also self-sabotaging, right? With substance, alcohol, drugs, making, right? So it's almost like you're living two different lives. So you're in the day, you're presenting as A, and then at night, you're almost living this double lifestyle, and it's not allowing you to be best version of yourself, not getting enough sleep, spending time with wrong individuals, and you're just adding toxins to my body, right? So my body, spiritually, emotionally, can't heal. It's almost like my spirit doesn't even want to embody this body because of how toxic it is, right? I'm vibrating at such a wrong frequency, right? So, you know, for me, through some challenging experiences, and we can get into them as well, you know, and through some close calls and through a lot of self-sabotage and losing opportunities, relationships, professional opportunities, I came to this place where, you know, after a few rock bottoms, let's say, Peter, it wasn't just one, it was a few, that there was an awakening. You know, there was enough momentum and synergy to kind of, everything just kind of presented itself, right? And through there, I saw some healing, which consisted of, you know, it's almost this hypnotherapy, deep imagining, where it kind of stopped me in my tracks and said, you know, take a look at your where this is coming from. You know, stop and take a look at some of your self-sabotaging stuff. One of the biggest things that I realized is that I didn't love myself, right? Lack of self-worth. And I really didn't even understand the concept of self-worth before I got into this. But through that, I was able to really internalize and show where I'm not showing up, where there's a lack of self-worth, and then channel that into the program. I don't want to talk too much about, you know, my journey, but, you know, I'll tell you this, Peter, you know, part of the things, in addition to close family members and loved ones saying, hey, enough's enough here, like, your shit together, if I can say that. It was also, you know, just, you know, again, you know, you're Peter, the healer. So I'm going to say this, maybe you'll understand, when the universe is trying to show you that, hey, it's time, and send you a ping and a message, it comes in a number of different ways. And when I'm not living authentically, it's almost like it's trying to shake me back into my center. I need to get back to center, and it was very loud. I had to put myself into some treatment and the healing. And, you know, from there, gave birth to, you know, the program. Because what I noticed, Peter, and I'll get to the program in a second, is, you know, there were a lot of high performers who are living, when you look at it, Peter, and you just take a picture at it and you see them on stage or living, you think that they're in their element and that they're happy and they're fully fulfilled. And there are some that are walking the straight path, and then there are others that are, because they're broken, you know, they're doing some self-sabotaging things. And that's when I realized, you know, how do I use this to help other people? My learnings, my teaching, right? I'm already doing it from a performance standpoint, getting on stage, but let's work on the back end so we can clean all of self, right? So the program, Engineering Confidence, it's twofold. It consists of habits for high performance, you know, but in the back end, I think that's what's the most important, starting with, which is unblocking limited beliefs. You know, takes you through, like, if you're in a rut, or you've plateaued, or you're experiencing self-sabotaging behaviors, or you're not living the best version of yourself, let's look for clarity, but let's look to see where you're not aligned with your authentic you, right? And are you even aware of authentically your authentic code and what makes you, right? If there were 4 elements or 4 pillars that made you, whether it's creativity, you want to need to be creative, or you one that's communicates, or you're one that needs to show luxury, or you're a person that likes to be educated, or you're a spiritual wellness person, or it's health, or whatever the components that make you you, you know, how close, A, are you aware, and B, how close are you to living that code and being authentic? And I feel like what I discovered is the further you are from that, the more you find ways to kind of fill that gap, fill that void. So the program starts with there. The program also starts to look at, you know, where you've maybe even experienced some shame and some pain, and how that has manifested itself into self-sabotage, and how that has manifested itself into this void that you're trying to kind of clean up, right? So it starts with there, unlocking limited beliefs. And then from there, we talk about habits that people need to really focus on becoming a high performance person. Habits that start with, again, seeking clarity about self, how you want to be in social environments, having the skill sets. So you want to make sure you have the skill sets if you're missing those skills, and then also ways that you can provide service. You know, the program also goes through, and I'll keep talking here, Peter, until you interject, right? The program.
Oh, I'm telling you, Patrick, you're doing such a great job. I don't want to disturb the flow, but
I'll keep going here.
I just put a few words in here. I think what's so appealing so far from what I'm hearing from you is that you're not afraid to talk about your own personal struggles and challenges. And I think that adds strength to whatever it is that you're offering people, because you're coming from a genuine place, and all performers know what you're talking about, especially dancers. And we all know about Michael Jackson, a singer, but also a great dancer, but he was on painkillers along with all kinds of other things, right? To be able to, you know, do what he does. Paula Abdul, so many well-known celebrities have trouble with drugs.
Yes.
You know, whether it's you know, mostly painkillers, but that can lead to all kinds of other things, as you were saying, and that really creates a void in your life. You can't be as well connected to mind, body, spirit, and that affects your performance ultimately.
Yes, right, and then that's so true. There's but you know, the thing is too, Peter, is when you're in that, the irony is, like, if you're not grounded, and that's why I keep going back to like how well you know self and what's important. If you're not really grounded there, once things start to happen, you almost lose sight, and you just start to move in the direction that, you know, wherever the wind blows, and then you start indulging or experimenting in things that may not be the best for you. But because you're not really solid and secure in self and what's important for yourself, it's very easy. Now, I wouldn't say manipulated, because people are making the choices, but you're just not aligning with things that are right. And that's what I think, like, right now. So what I try to do is, when I speak to, you know, my peers, or when I speak to people who I know are going through things, you know, I try to get them to align, especially when we're working one-on-one, is to really understand what's important, right? There's this misconception too sometimes, Peter, that, you know, part of entertainment and excitement is also indulging in, you know, certain substances or behaviors that are not, you know, the best for you. There's this misconception, like they almost go hand in hand, you know, and it's also kind of breaking down that stereotype and saying, hey, like, no, not true, right? And then the second piece of it as well is, after you break that down, is just getting people to really realign themselves, and just so they can understand what's important, right? So that's the biggest thing, because like you said, you've seen it with the Michael Jackson and other people, whether it's painkillers or alcohol or what have you, right? But it's, can we really see what's important, right? Can we really get back to the basics and what's important here? Can you align with self? Because I look at it, Peter, and I'd like to hear your thoughts too. It's like, you know, when someone is indulging in something like that, and you know how harmful it is to your body, and you know that you can't perform at your peak, almost counterproductive, and you're not getting sleep, which is important, and it's going to impact your voice, and you can't be the best on stage. Then the question becomes, why are we indulging in these things, right? And is it the love for this toxin, or like is it deeper than that? And it's like there's a lack of love for self, so we're just trying to get it wherever we can, almost, so to speak.
Yes, but the drugs, of course, become the replacement. You know, when you have first when you're doing the performance and you're at the peak of your performance, and of course the audience is really into it, and then they're applauding, and you really get all the checks. And all the boxes are checked off in your brain. Hey, they really liked it. Wow. and you really are getting, a rush, right? I mean, there's the biochemical thing going on in your brain.
Yes.
But then you get an injury. The injury leads to going to the doctor.
Yeah.
Doctor said, well, try these pills for a while. Maybe
Right.
it's better. That's where it starts.
Yes.
So what do you tell people? They've got this pain. They want to continue performing at peak level, but it's really, really difficult.
Yes. So great question. What I've told people, and you'll get it more with the athletes, where they're trying to go through with the performers. Some of them, the dancers, sometimes they'll get injured. But what I always tell people is, I'll give you an example of myself, very personal first, and then kind of the message. I had to have a surgery because I tore the tear in my left leg ACL tear. But I still needed to kind of perform and do what I need to do. And they prescribed me Oxycontins, right? And Oxycontins, as everyone knows, is something that people will use to get high. And so for myself, even knowing that, I wanted to put strong boundaries, and that's what I said to people as well. And again, it goes back to self. Like, I wanted to create an environment for myself where I have some boundaries. They said, I can take this and continue performing, or I'll have to wait a little bit longer, try to heal and not perform. And that's the tough decision where I feel like sometimes people have to make, right? Because at the end of the day, harder rut to get out of when now I'm dealing with, now I have to get out of this Oxycontin or drug relationship that I've established now because I wanted to perform so much, right? So I really try to get people to see, and you have that pressure of, performing, not letting down your team, not letting down, contracts that you've already established. So people look at it from their financial obligation and pressure. But what I always try to tell people is go back to self first, right? So you need time to heal self. The opportunities and contracts will still be there. People will understand, but it's when you're part of the machine and life feels like you're constantly moving and going, you're just constantly thinking about, well, what about this next contract? No, I made an obligation to this. I made a commitment to this. I have to be there. I can't let them down. I can't let these people down. But if you can stop, Peter, and just kind of almost smell the roses, like just be patient and stop. I'm like, okay, you are what's important. If you can't be 100%, you can't deliver for any family, friends, contracts, etc. So rather than taking that substance, I'm always like trying to get people to focus on, as naturally as you can, heal self, or just taper off.
If I could interrupt, I mean, I know that buzz that people have when they perform. I mean, I many years ago, I don't want to tell you how long ago, my age, but I'm young at heart.
Yes, I can feel your young energy.
It's the spirit. It's ageless. So before I went into the helping profession, and I worked as a psychologist and a holistic healer, and I do hypnotherapy as well.
Okay.
We call my special brand spiritual hypnosis. but that's another time we might chat.
Yeah,
But
that's great.
basically, before I did all that, I was also performing. I'm not a dancer. I would never, although I love dancing, you know, on my own with my wife, with, you know, with the music. And, ooh, look out! I can move, but I'm not good at following steps. But anyway, to make a long story short, I was involved in a number of musicals for a
Yes.
period of time, and we did everything from singing, dancing, you name it. And I went for a period where I noticed that, you know, I would do the performance
Yes.
and it would go on for a week or whatever,
Right.
and then it would end.
Yeah.
Okay, so that I'm just showing that curve
See it.
because there's this up and down
Yes.
feeling emotionally because you're not getting that
That
high,
peak.
the adrenaline fix.
Right.
So that's when you are rushing around looking for another gig.
Right.
Because
Yes.
oh, help, I need this fix. Okay.
Yes.
But it's also the time that you're most vulnerable to trying to fill that hole, right? So what do you tell people?
Yeah. So a great question. So when you're fluctuating, and some people will have it where it's pretty steady, and I think that's where everyone's trying to get to, where you're constantly working and you're steady, there's less fluctuation, right? What I try to tell people is still try to focus on when you don't have, say, the next gig, right? How else can I still fulfill that I, so to speak? So where else can I still, and again, I'm going to go back to my authentic code because a lot of it lands there for me. It's okay. So I don't have the next gig. Important for me to create. So creating also brings me happiness, joy. I can bring the joy and I can spread it, which brings me fulfillment, right? So I always tell people to go back to what got you there in the first place. If it's creating music, get back into the studio and start creating. Collaborating with other artists, collaborate, because from that something can blossom. But go back to that. Sometimes you're right. We're thinking, you know, because self is here, authentic code is here. And then, you know, the material things, the money and the fame and the next gig and the excitement is here. But sometimes we forget that this authentic thing also brings us that excitement. That's what landed us to get here, right? All this passion and cultivating that gave us the opportunity where we can be on stage and do this. So what I tell people is like, okay, if you're chasing it, it's not there, and you're starting to plateau, it fluctuates, get back into the lab right away. That's what I always tell people. Get back into the studio, start creating, finding new music, contacting other artists that you always wanted to work with. Create that, allow that to be into your schedule. So if your schedule has a lot of, you know, valleys and peaks and that time that you have to fill that void, be in the studio creating instead of kind of meandering around and not knowing and chasing and looking, because you're absolutely right. Then it's easy for me to get into this dark crevice where I'm looking for other things that will give you that high. It's like an artificial high, but it will give you that stimulus and you're feeling excited. But then when you come down, you realize like this wasn't the right thing. That's a dark place to be, because if you establish habit there, it's hard to get out. So I always tell people, create the habits that are going to allow you to be the best versions of yourself. So you're not on stage, live in the studio. You don't have the next gig, be creating. How important is that to you? And to every artist, it's super important. When they're not creating, they feel down and low. So I'm like, be in the studio, create, improve your skill set. And if there's skills that you don't have, like right now, this is a great time. I'll talk about, you know, COVID. You know, artists are, when I speak to artists, whether, you know, there are people that I've worked with in the States or here, they've lost sense of self because they feel like I've been groomed and trained to be this performer from childhood. So now that I can't do that, who am I? What am I doing here? am I supposed to get a regular job? Like, you know, they're lost in this frustration, and they can seep in depression, and then it starts to impact your loved ones, your wife, your kids, like people around can feel that energy. And what I'm always saying is just get back into what makes you happy. Start to create, but, you know, don't think if the opportunity is not there, you know, prepare for the opportunity. Right? Maybe you can cultivate the opportunity by doing something different. Maybe you can be a trailblazer if you're doing something and you put something out there that someone's like, wow, I never saw that as something that could work, but I'm interested in it. But you have to think outside the box and not just let the circumstances of, say, COVID, lockdown, because people are not touring, clubs are not open for DJs, dancers can't be on tour with artists, musicians are not filling stadiums. So everyone is kind of in this rut. But what I say is, you know, instead of turning to something that might make it 10 times worse, and I'm speaking from experience, I say to everyone, get into the studio, but prepare for that opportunity that is not on the radar. You can't see it yet.
Yeah, well, what I'm seeing from you is that, you know, you have taken the existing situation,
Yes.
the COVID-19.
Right.
Obviously, you're not able to do a lot of the things you used to do, but you've somehow found a way to use your experience,
yes,
and your own, you know, self knowledge and work that you've done on yourself to help others, especially in the performing arts.
absolutely.
And so that's a fantastic example
Yes,
of how you've taken the challenge of you know, not having the usual kind of routines that you've developed, to just turn it around into something very valuable.
yes. Thank you.
And so,
Thank you.
what would you suggest to somebody, you know, like you talk about getting back to that core
Yes.
self,
Yes.
what it is that started them out on the creative journey.
Mm-hmm.
Now they have developed, you know, through hard work and many hours in the studio and going out there and practicing, and then going on stage, doing tours, records, whatever, and all that stopped. What do you do?
What do you do? What do you do financially?
Well, usually that's often
Yeah,
what happens.
yeah. So
No more money.
no, so Peter, that is the biggest challenge, financial hardship, right? At least when I speak to a few artists, they're like, there's some concern there, right? And obviously there are things that we can do from a government perspective. If you need to apply for assistance, like there are ways. But I think that, you know, for the artist, not being able to, it's your primary source of income, and now you've lost that primary source of income. So there's a stress and anxiety comes with that. How do I pay my bills? How can I still live here? Can I afford this? Do I need to move? And if you have a family and children, you know, it just becomes compounded. So the first thing that I really try to say to anyone is still, you know, I'm just going to say it, just humble yourself. You know, if you are in a position where you need some financial assistance just to get through, and you're not going to make the money the same way you did, like, I think the first step is just kind of accepting that as okay. If, you know, if we attach shame and embarrassment to that, it may fuel anger, and you know, and if it affects our pride and ego is bruised, you know, you may not want to accept some of the resources that are there to assist. So it's still putting you in a rut, or you may accept it, but you're taking it like with anger and frustration, and it's still going to yield this result that people are still going to feel uncomfortable around you, and you're going to be in a place of shame and embarrassment and anger, and you won't want to, you know, share that or talk about it. And I think if you can just accept it with grace, like, hey, you know, this is the situation, and therefore this is what I need to do to take care of self and family, and maybe we need to adjust our financial, but, you know, we will get out of this, we will, if you can see past, I would say to people, like, if you can see past the negativity of the current circumstances and you can just try to vision, have vision of, future state, as opposed to focusing on the rut that I'm in and how do I get past this, we're not making money. Yes, facts. I think it's important as well, Peter, that we acknowledge and accept the reality of the negativity. Like, okay, own that feeling of this doesn't feel good. This is going to be tough. I feel like beaten down. How do I take care of family, friends, wife? How do we live the same way? I think it's okay to be in that space, so I don't think anyone should feel shame around hardship, and own that. But then at the same time, once we've kind of digested that, what I say to people is now try to vision beyond your current circumstance, right? And let's start acting that way. So what does that entail? If I need to start working a little bit harder, if I need to, look for other jobs until I'm able to do what I love, I think that's a great bridge, right? So if I need to find a bridge job until I can do what I need to do, because this is the circumstances that are affecting everyone, I tell people that's okay, right? Because as long as you're taking care of your responsibilities. And then the other piece, like I was saying to you, that's more of a physical thing people can do. The other piece I was saying to you, Peter, is really being okay and not attaching shame and embarrassment to it, and just kind of accepting, like, yes, this, I'm an artist, I can't travel anymore, this is happening to our industry, so I just have to accept this and not take it with embarrassment. In the restaurant, if it was a restaurant person, an entrepreneur, I have other colleagues and friends that I work with, and they're like, yeah, you know what, I'm not making any money anymore, and I was making a lot of money before, and I'm not making any, but they're owning it with grace. So they're not attaching this negativity to it, right? So that's kind of one thing that I would say to help people, right? But I think that's the hard piece of the two, just owning it and embracing it.
Yeah, accepting it and
Yes.
not shaming, adding more
Yes.
shame to yourself is how you label
Right.
the experiences can make a big difference. Yeah.
And sometimes too, Peter, and this is the piece, like, when it comes to shaming, like, oftentimes too, people will see other people shaming others that are in this predicament. Some people are accepting, some people are shaming. So when one watches, as an artist, I see someone else being shamed because they're in a financial predicament, then I don't want to come out in the open and say, well, hey, I'm there too. I want to protect it and put a barrier as much as I can so no one can see me. Yeah. Right. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And it's tough. It is tough. Right. So, but I mean, that's the message that I would give people, like, and I know it's easier said than done, but if you can embrace that, Peter, like, if you can really just be like, I am comfortable in my skin and I know that I will achieve that success. But right now, just like with the substance, this is something that I went through. I accept it. There's no shame around it. I can speak to it, but I'm no longer there, right? If you can kind of, and that's the example that I kind of give people. So if they could see, like, oh, wow, you're right, I've seen you do that, circumstances, but there's some similarities or commonalities. Maybe I can do the same.
Yeah, well, I think it's wonderful that you are offering this service, and just so that people know, Patrick also has his own live podcast.
Yes.
Stuff in the Spotlight live podcast, and you have very many world-renowned artists, creators, performers, entrepreneurs, and that's very interesting as well. Some of the artists we've had, DJ starting with scratch, Drew, I interviewed him on my show. Sean,
yeah, he's a good guy.
And yeah, great videos. Oh my
yes,
God.
Yeah,
the one in Moscow. Moscow did that.
Yes, that's right. That's right.
Oh, and then one in BC. Oh,
yes, yeah,
yeah.
Drew's a good guy.
Henry Santos from Aventura, Cabby Richard, and Devil Brown. So you're right up there with the top of the cream, eh?
Oh, thank you.
But I would
Thank you.
imagine, well, look at Drew. I mean, he managed to, cut a new album
Yes.
in the middle of this pandemic last spring. Went to Moscow and did the whole 12 works. So,
Right.
things
But
are
that's the thing,
possible.
Peter, right? It's like, how come some people, just from a conversation standpoint, like, why is it some people are able to just push and persevere and find the opportunity, and then, why is it that others just they get stuck in current
Yeah,
state?
that's a good point. Yeah. Why is
Right.
that? Yeah.
Right.
But what you're offering is some helping hand to
Yes.
give people some steps that they can take
Yes.
to help them bridge the gap that we're in right now with the pandemic. And tell me, what's the process? I mean, when somebody contacts you to get your program, Engineering Confidence, what are the steps they need to take to get this started with you?
To get started, yeah. I mean, there's a few steps to get started. But usually, what I try to understand is kind of where they're at, right? So just kind of where they're at, what they're looking for. I try to find out, are they coachable? Are they willing and ready to,
That's a good thing.
right,
How do you
right,
determine that? Are they
right?
comfortable?
Because some people, they want the results, but they're not ready to do the work.
Mm,
And I'm a firm believer it's okay, Peter, to be where you are, because every stage has its lesson. So if you're at a place where you can't acknowledge it yet because there hasn't been enough challenges, that is your lesson. You are living your lesson. You hopefully will either get out of the rut and ready, but you are in the place where you need to be at, right? I don't fault anyone for being in that negative state. And then maybe a level up is someone who can see it, acknowledges it, is aware, would like to make some changes, but is not ready to do the work required, right? So whether they're seeing a psychologist, psychotherapist, hypnosis, a coach, if it's a, even if it's a talented artist, physically talented, but is not ready to come to the studio and rehearse and train every day, but it requires you to be there every day before we tour, you're just not the right person. It's kind of how we look at it. So the way we kind of filter that, it was just kind of let them know what the process is like and where they are. And in just the discussion alone, what I'll even do is just give them light homework. Like, hey, what to start, why to do this as almost like to prime and see where they're at. Very something light, very subtle. And some people will do it right away. I gauge to see how that is done. It's a very light exercise that you could probably do within the same day, but I also look to see, and I'll give them some time to do it. And that helps me judge kind of where they are. And then I'll speak to it. I like to just kind of speak to, if it's completed, we look at, the results, and we discuss it. If it's not completed, just kind of as to the why. Oh, I didn't have time. Oh, I was busy. Oh, this came up. And then it just kind of starts to set where they are. But I still want to work with someone who maybe just needs a little bit of a push. But some people who are resistant to it and you're just not ready, that's kind of where I start. To answer your question, where do you start? I kind of start there. Are you coachable? Are you aware and are you ready to start making some changes, right? If I come to work with you, Peter, and I say I'm ready, and you say I have the skills, and I've helped other people, and we start, and you say, I need you to do this, and I don't do it. And the next week you say, well, I need you to do a little more. I don't do it. And you try as much, and I say no. There's only so much you can do.
It's like what we say, it's a popular saying among helping professionals, either shit or get off the pot.
There you go, right? So
that kind of summarizes what you're talking about.
That summarizes it very well.
There you go. Yeah.
And then,
tell me, Patrick, what what would be the best way for somebody to get in touch with you?
the best way to someone to get in touch with me is a few ways. So they can contact me at, nextupinthespotlight@gmail.com. That is my email address. I also, like Peter said, I have the podcast next_up_in the spotlight. You can contact me there as well. Also my Facebook page, Next Up in the Spotlight, right? So it's very, very easy with the Next Up in the Spotlight. And, I'm open to any questions that anyone has, to DM, to contact me. My goal and my objective is to really help people grow, because, I've seen the benefits when I looked at other people who've expanded my vision as to where I can be. It really helped by saying, like, okay, I'm not alone and someone else has done it. And they served me to be an expander, someone that, wow, they were in a similar circumstance as me and they've gotten out of this rut and they have the things that I would like to have in my life as well, that are wholesome things, right? So seeing someone walk through that path, I felt like, you know what, I want to be able to provide the same as well, but it requires me being authentic and being honest and, just letting everything out. And that's part of the reason why I said, you know what, let me be as honest about my journey as possible. And let me share and try to provide an active service. So, seeing my fellow artists and dancers and performers going through stuff and struggle and just feeling their pain, I wanted to provide an option and, information and ways that they can get out of that rut. Whether it's through Next Up in the Spotlight and providing a platform just to speak to it, or whether it's through the engineering confidence program where I could take them through steps, uncover limiting beliefs and add habits to that so they can get out of this rut. So again, Peter, I'm here to serve and to provide as much information and to help. I think this is a year with 2021 and the tail end of 2020 where, it's that uncertainty for a lot of people is creating some stress and anxiety. And like you said, when you have finances and family and an obligation and the pressure that comes with that, if we're not grounded, we can lead to other ways to deal with it that could be harmful, right? And it's about preventing us from getting there, right? So that's my goal, that's the objective, and I aim to serve. And I thank you, Peter, for providing a platform where I can speak to this as well, because what you're doing is equally as important, right? Giving us an opportunity to speak and share.
Well, Patrick, just, anyone watching this, as I am listening to you and watching you, I can tell that you are a sincere, loving, caring, giving individual. It's all over you, written all over your face. So, if I were looking for someone to help me through this time, I would certainly not hesitate to contact you.
Thank you, sir.
And I really appreciate the service that you're offering, as well as taking the time out today to be on my show. And we'll stay in touch, I hope.
Absolutely.
Many things, happening on my side as well. I might contact you about that. For example, I'm doing a show on suicide prevention, March 24th. And that's going to be a big show, collaboration with all kinds of artists and specialists.
I like that.
In the field. And I might even go through your publicist, Sasha.
Okay. No, that's a great idea.
Yeah, and certainly
and a great topic, important topic.
Oh, I mean, this is we don't have the statistics, but we do know that because of the pandemic, people who are already, suicidal have an even greater risk because of all the isolation and major challenges. So anyway, that's about what's going on with me. But what I'd like people to remember from this show today is that Patrick Danquah is available. He's experienced. He's talked about his own personal journey very openly. And I think that's what people need today. They need somebody who is open, not afraid to talk about themselves,
Right.
and give a hand to help in any way they can. If they have the tools to do so, then by all means, that's a wonderful service that you're offering, Patrick. So
Thank you. Thank you, Peter. I appreciate you. Thank you.
all the best to you, and we'll stay in touch. Take care.
Absolutely. Looking forward to hearing from you again. Best of luck, Peter.
Take care. Bye-bye.
Take care.